an engine that was everywhere but never quite got the glory. The Ford 390 FE was the hardest-working big block in Ford's lineup from 1961 to 1976, powering everything from Thunderbirds to F-350 trucks, from Mustangs to Galaxies. It was Ford's everyman engine, the one that got you to work on Monday, hauled the family on vacation, and could still surprise the unsuspecting at a stoplight. With displacement ranging from 255 to 401 horsepower depending on configuration, the 390 bridged the gap between economy and performance. It wasn't the exotic 427 that won Le Mans, nor the brutal 428 Cobra jet that dominated drag strips. The 390 was something more valuable, reliable, versatile, and available in nearly every Ford product for over a decade. But here's what makes the 390's story fascinating. It spent 15 years living in the shadow of flashier engines while quietly becoming Ford's most important big block. So why did the workhorse never become the warhorse? Historical context and development. The Ford 390 emerged from the FE engine family, FE standing for Ford Edsel, though that association quickly became something Ford wanted to forget after Edsel's spectacular failure. The FE series debuted in 1958 as Ford's answer to heavier cars and demands for more power, slotting between the maxed-out Y-block small blocks and the massive MEL engines reserved for Lincolns. By 1961, Ford had developed the 352 and 360 FE variants, but they needed more displacement to compete with GM and Chrysler's growing big blocks. The solution was elegant. Take the 352's 4.00-inch bore, increase it to 4.05 inches, and combine it with the 352's proven 3.50-inch stroke. The result was exactly 390.04 cubic inches of displacement. Ford initially marketed the 390 as premium power, calling it the Thunderbird Phi 8 when installed in Fords and the Monterey Phi 8 in Mercurys. The first applications were the 1961 Ford Thunderbird, Galaxy, and Fairlane, where it replaced the 352 as the top-tier engine option. Unlike the high-strung performance engines Ford was developing, the 390 was designed for broad usability, good torque across the RPM range, acceptable fuel economy for a big block, and reliability suitable for everything from police cars to delivery trucks. The 390 shared the FE's distinctive deep-skirted Y-block design, where the block casting extended well below the crankshaft centerline for rigidity and reduced vibration. This made it smooth and quiet, perfect for luxury applications, though it also made the engine heavier than more modern designs. The Golden Age. Throughout the 1960s, the Ford 390 appeared in an astonishing variety of applications, demonstrating versatility that few engines could match. Base two-barrel versions producing around 265 horsepower powered full-size sedans and station wagons, providing adequate performance with reasonable economy. Four-barrel versions producing 300 to 320 horsepower served in everything from Thunderbirds to Mustangs. The high-performance variants were where things got interesting. In 1961 to 1962, Ford offered breathtaking 375 and 401 horsepower versions with either single or triple two-barrel carburetors, 10.5 to 1 compression, solid lifters, and aluminum intake manifolds. These high-performance 390s could rev to 6,000 RPM and delivered performance that embarrassed many competitors. The 401 horsepower version with 3 two-barrel carbs produced 430 pound-feet of torque, making it a genuine muscle car power plant. When the Mustang launched in 1964, the 390 eventually became available, creating the GT 390 Mustang of 1967 to 1969 with 335 horsepower. These cars offered legitimate performance at prices working people could afford, unlike the exotic 427 and 428 variants. The 390 GT also powered Fairlane GTs and Mercury Cougars, establishing Ford's performance credentials in the mid-size market. Perhaps most impressively, the 390 succeeded in applications most performance engines couldn't handle. Police departments loved 390-powered cruisers for their combination of power and durability. Truck buyers relied on 390 FT Ford truck versions from 1967 to 1976, where the engine's torque characteristics and rugged construction made it ideal for hauling and towing. The 390 proved that a single-engine platform could serve both performance and commercial needs. Technical brilliance. The 390's technical success came from methodical engineering rather than exotic technology. The 4.05-inch bore and 3.785-inch stroke created a slightly under-square design that prioritized mid-range torque over peak horsepower, exactly what most real-world driving demanded. This combination delivered strong pulling power from 2,000 to 5,000 RPM, making the engine feel powerful in normal driving situations. The cast iron block and heads were massively overbuilt by modern standards, but this robustness meant the 390 could handle decades of abuse. 5 main bearings supported the crankshaft, providing adequate support for street and mild performance applications. The deep-skirted block design extended 3.625 inches below the crankshaft centerline, creating exceptional rigidity that reduced vibration and improved bearing life. Early 390s featured mechanical lifters, but Ford quickly switched to hydraulic lifters for easier maintenance and quieter operation, crucial for luxury car applications. The blocks were redesigned mid-year 1958 to accept hydraulic lifters, showing Ford's responsiveness to market demands. This made the 390 significantly more user-friendly than competitors requiring regular valve adjustments. The FE's unique design placed a portion of the intake manifold under the valve covers, incorporating the pushrod access passages. While this complicated valve cover removal, it created a more rigid intake-to-head seal and improved thermal management. The induction system could accommodate everything from single 2-barrel carburetors to triple 2-barrel setups, providing enormous flexibility for different applications. Most importantly, the 390 was designed for serviceability. Parts were readily available, clearances were generous enough to forgive marginal maintenance, and the straightforward architecture meant any competent mechanic could rebuild one without specialized knowledge. Challenges rise. By the mid-1960s, the Ford 390 faced an identity crisis that would define its legacy. While the engine performed admirably in virtually every application, it suffered from being neither the cheapest option nor the ultimate performer. The 390 occupied an awkward middle ground that became increasingly difficult to justify as the muscle car wars intensified. The most immediate challenge came from within Ford's own lineup. When the 406 arrived in 1962 and the legendary 427 in 1963, the high-performance 390 variants became redundant. Why build expensive 390 high-performance engines when the 427 offered genuinely exotic performance? Ford quietly discontinued the 375 and 401 horsepower 390s after 1962, leaving only more mundane versions in production. But the real problem appeared from the opposite direction. The 390 was too expensive and thirsty to compete with Ford's excellent small-block engines for economy-minded buyers, yet not powerful enough to satisfy muscle car enthusiasts who could order 427s or 428 Cobra jets. The 390 GT Mustangs of 1967 to 1969 were handsome and quick, but they couldn't match the brutal acceleration of 428 Cobra jet Mustangs that cost only slightly more. Performance reputation became another issue. Street racers discovered that while 390s were reliable and torquey, they didn't respond as well to modifications as competing GM and Chrysler big blocks. The FE's relatively poor cylinder head design limited breathing, and the long stroke meant the engine didn't rev as freely as over-square competitors. Enthusiasts looking for maximum quarter-mile performance typically bypassed the 390 entirely. Insurance companies didn't help matters. By the late 1960s, big block insurance premiums were escalating rapidly, and buyers paying those rates wanted the baddest engines available. The 390 GT's 335 horsepower seemed modest compared to 427 and 428 specifications, even though real-world performance differences were often smaller than spec sheets suggested. The transition. The 390's gradual exit from Ford's performance lineup happened almost imperceptibly. After 1967, the 390 GT remained available in Mustangs, Fairlanes, and Cougars, but marketing emphasis shifted decisively toward the new 428 Cobra jet that debuted in 1968. The 428 CJ offered dramatically better performance at similar cost, making the 390 GT seem overpriced and underpowered by comparison. Ford's own internal analysis revealed the problem. While the 390 was their most common big block engine in absolute numbers, very few buyers were choosing it for performance reasons. The vast majority of 390s went into sedate applications: family sedans, station wagons, trucks, and police cars. The performance variants that had justified the engine's development were becoming an increasingly small percentage of total production. By 1968, only the 390 and 428 remained in Ford's passenger car FE lineup, with the exotic 427 reserved for specialized applications. The 410, 406, and 352 had all been discontinued, streamlining production, but also signaling the FE's approaching obsolescence. Ford's new 385 series engines, the 429 and 460, were already under development, designed from the beginning for modern emissions controls and corporate average fuel economy requirements. Passenger car 390 production ended after 1971, though the engine continued in trucks through 1976. The truck versions, designated 390 FT, served faithfully in F-Series pickups, proving that the 390's core strengths of reliability and torque remained valuable even as its performance credentials faded. These final 397s were detuned for emissions compliance and longevity, making around 255 horsepower, respectable for truck work, but a far cry from the 401 horsepower glory days. The 390's exit wasn't mourned the way enthusiasts grieved the 427's passing or celebrated the 428 Cobra jet's brief reign. The 390 simply faded away, a victim of being too good at too many things to excel at any one of them. Legacy and modern reality. Today, the Ford 390 FE occupies a curious position in automotive history. It's simultaneously one of Ford's most produced big blocks, yet one of the least celebrated by enthusiasts. But time has been kind to the 390's reputation, as builders and restorers have rediscovered what made this engine special. The aftermarket has embraced the 390 as an excellent foundation for affordable big block builds. Modern stroker kits can transform 390s into 445 or even 475 cubic inch monsters, producing 500-plus horsepower with reliability unthinkable in the 1960s. The engine's robust bottom end, generous cylinder wall thickness, and wide parts compatibility make it an ideal platform for performance builds costing significantly less than 427 or 428 restorations. Classic car owners have learned to appreciate the 390's practical virtues. In Thunderbirds and Galaxies, where the engine was most common, it provides exactly the right character: smooth, torquey, and relaxed, rather than high-strung and temperamental. Restored 390 GT Mustangs command strong prices from collectors who appreciate their relative rarity compared to small block and 428 Cobra jet variants. The truck applications have created their own following. Enthusiasts building vintage F-Series pickups often prefer 390 FT engines for their authentic character and plentiful availability. Unlike rare performance engines, 390 FT cores can still be found in salvage yards, and every component needed for rebuilding remains readily available. Perhaps most significantly, the 390 has taught modern enthusiasts valuable lessons about automotive priorities. In an era obsessed with peak horsepower numbers, the 390 reminds us that versatility, reliability, and broad usability often matter more than specification sheets. The engine that powered police cars and luxury coupes, muscle cars and heavy trucks, performance Mustangs and family station wagons demonstrated engineering excellence through adaptability rather than specialization. The Ford 390 proved that being the best workhorse matters more than being the flashiest performer. 15 years powering everything Ford built, that's a legacy worth celebrating. What's your 390 story? Share below and subscribe for more unsung automotive heroes.